Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, a place to find connection and a sense of belonging, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we talk about sensitivity and the richness that it adds, the strengths we have because of our sensitivity, and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there, this is bonus episode 52, and today I want to talk to you about loyalty and some of the things that we struggle with in relationships as highly sensitive people. I mean, this also means that we have tremendous strengths, but I've just noticed a pattern coming up recently that I want to talk to you about. I was recently a guest on someone's podcast, and it's interesting because I could be wrong. I didn't check this out. It didn't occur to me until I listened to the episode after it had been aired. But it felt like the guest was trying to illuminate how difficult it is for HSPs to get out of relationships because of loyalty issues. I could be reading into this. I honestly don't know. But because of the nature of the podcast, it's just kind of what it felt like to me. I could be totally wrong, but it really got me thinking. And oftentimes, when I think about, and again, if I step on anybody's toes, I'm really sorry. It's not my intention. When I've thought about people that are in relationships where there's domestic violence, I know how hard it can be for people to get out. I know that the cycle is that, you have a blow up, there's one of the people wants to leave, then there's remorse and the partner makes up, and then they have kind of a honeymoon phase, and then it starts over again. And I've shared with you, I've been married before, and when my husband and I separated, there was no domestic abuse. There was no violence, nothing like that. We just had a very tumultuous relationship. And, we would go through that. I'd miss him and then I'd get back together and we'd start dating and then the problems came up and then we'd separate and then I'd miss him. So we went through that. I'm sharing that with you to say that it's easy to go, how come people just don't leave? And I'm acknowledging, I get it. As highly sensitive people, we have more mirror neurons. We feel more empathy. We imagine what the other person is going through, so it can make it harder for us with conflict, with setting limits, with ending relationships, with setting boundaries, because some of the things that are our greatest strengths also can trip us up and make it challenging for us. And we are very loyal in relationships. And I've recently been reflecting over a couple of relationships that I have, and one of them is a long-standing relationship with someone, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing toxic about it. It just doesn't feel like it's working for me anymore. And as I'm growing, and I've told you I'm growing myself up with this podcast and learning to name what's going on with myself, I'm really finding that it's challenging for me to be in relationships with people when they're not able to name what's going on. And the example that I've given before is the difference of, if I'm not naming what's going on and you say, hey, Patricia, how are you doing today? And I go like, well, I walked the dog today and I'm just getting some work done. And I'm planning on watching this movie tonight. It's like that energy is hard to be around because there's kind of this undercurrent that I'm not naming it. And if I say like, God, I am just so depleted right now. I'm doing the stuff I need to do. I walk the dog. I thought watching a movie was going to make me feel better. I spent some time working. Like I'm just feeling depressed or anxious or things just aren't feeling right. I'm feeling disconnected. That to me is so much easier to connect with someone because now we're talking about what's going on. And I don't mean this judgmentally, but I feel like that energy comes out sideways if we're not naming it and we don't own it. No fault, no blame. Sometimes stuff is going on and we don't know it. I'm recognizing that it's really important for the people that I'm close to, that I'm intimate with. I'm not talking about, I don't have these high expectations for everybody in the world, but if you're going to be in my inner circle, I get really impacted by people's energy. And what I've found is I feel like I don't know what I'm going to get when I interact with this person. And sometimes things are okay and sometimes they're not. And so I find myself feeling really reluctant and kind of avoidant. I've done some things around this relationship. I don't want to share too much. I have this thing that no one's ever going to want to be friends with me because I may talk about it on the podcast. And again, my intention in talking about it is not to shame anybody, not to throw anybody under the bus, but to name some of these challenges that go on because it's not specific to this relationship. I'm sure a number of you that are listening can identify with some part of this. And the challenge that I've had is I have this sense of loyalty. There's nothing toxic. There's nothing that this person has done wrong. This person has been incredibly supportive and has been a cheerleader and has been by my side through some really tough times. And we've been friends for a very long time. And I was talking with another friend recently who was talking about how grateful they are that they have these long-standing friendships from a long time ago. And I'm just finding that with the growth and the work that I'm doing, I'm just expecting different things in relationships. And it makes me feel like I'm kind of a lousy friend, that I have this belief and this sense of loyalty that I should be hanging out with people regardless, and that I'm being too picky or I'm, being too particular. So just looking at how has this sense of loyalty really impacted how I feel in relationships. And I have to say that in this relationship, I said I need to take a break for a while. And it's been very interesting that I really have not been having a sense of longing or missing. It really created space for some other relationships to come into my life that feel like they're really meeting my needs. And I'm having some guilt about, like, what do I do around this relationship? And then in a parallel process, I was listening back to, I do a lot of guest interviews on other podcasts. And often they're recorded, 6 weeks, 2 months in advance, and I don't remember what I say. And it's very interesting that I just listened to an episode that came out where I was a guest and I was talking about something that happened in, I'm just going to say, a group to kind of protect somebody's identity. In this group, their values, this group's values and my values are very different. And I'm the minority. So not only, am I the HSP, but I'm in the minority. And in this group, they were talking about minority group, underrepresented, and talking about those people in terms of those people and they shouldn't and they don't. This made my heart hurt. It really made my heart hurt. And I actually got up and went to the bathroom. I texted Laura because I just felt like I couldn't figure out what to do. And I decided when I came out of the bathroom, we were going to leave because I just did not want to be around that. And it turns out by the time I came out, they were talking about something else and we managed it. And this is a group that my husband and I get together with, on a regular basis. And we were going to be getting together with them. Our next time was coming up. And I had told my husband, I don't know that this group is working for me. And I'd kind of forgotten about this incident. But I felt like when I go, I don't end up feeling really charged up. I don't feel like it's really meeting my needs. It's nice. Again, we've got this longevity. It's hard for us as a couple to find other couples that we like to be with, other groups of people that we like to be with. So it feels esteeming to have these get-togethers. And I was saying, I don't know that it's working for me. Well, this last time that we got together, it just was very, very clear that this is just not working for me. And I felt incredibly uncomfortable, and some of the dynamics just really, it was so blatant. And I have to say that as highly sensitive people, we pick up on things that other people don't pick up on. And so on the way home from this gathering, I was processing with my husband. He was very supportive. He recognized a lot of the things that were going on. The next morning, I was still really upset about it. And I think because we have this long-standing relationship with these group of people, and it just felt like the behavior that I saw was way out of the norm, and it was confusing. It was disappointing to me, and I wanted to keep talking about it. And when I was talking about it with my husband, his perspective about one part of the evening was very different than mine. Like, he didn't see it as being that bad. He didn't say I was being dramatic, but I kind of felt like that was the message that I got. And so it's really important for us as highly sensitive people that I may be picking up on 20 things that happened in that situation. Our brains light up and fire in way more areas than the non-HSP brain does. So it's very possible in this one specific interaction, I'm just making up numbers, I'm not a researcher, 20 parts of my brain were lit up, taking in 20 pieces of information. My husband, who I'm going to say in this instant, non-HSP, 4 to 5 parts of his brain were lit up taking in information. So he's got, 5 pieces of data. I've got 20 pieces of data. I have a really clear idea of what happened in that interaction, and it was very uncomfortable. And so it's not that he's wrong. It's not that I'm right. It's that we perceive things differently as highly sensitive people. I think this happens very frequently, that we're picking up way more things than your non-HSPs are. And then when they don't understand what we're upset about or what we're seeing, we question our own sense of reality. So this is why it's really important to have other highly sensitive people in your life, or people that understand the trait of sensitivity. And we've got to validate for ourselves, like, I know that I felt incredibly uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Whether anybody else that was there felt that or experienced that, and if we all sat down together and I'm the only person that said, like, this just felt really yucky, I got to trust that that's good for me and to go with it. So one of the things that I did the next morning when I was still kind of upset is I reached out to Laura Carr, who's been on the podcast before, and she had some time and we talked about it. And it was really important for me to hear what my thoughts were. Again, my husband was really supportive the night before, but it just seemed like something had shifted around one of the incidents. And I just really needed to hear and to recognize that I went into this situation kind of expecting people to show up the way that they had been. And I think that there are some shifts and changes going on, and for me to honor that this just didn't work. And so my decision is, for now, I'm really not going to re-engage in this group. It just, something seems to happen periodically. It feels uncomfortable. I'm in the minority. And there's a difference between when you're with a group of people. Like, I have a close friend I've known for years, and there are certain things that we just don't see eye to eye on. We made a conscious decision that these are the things that we're just not going to talk about in our relationship because we don't agree on them. And the relationship has really flourished because of that. So I'm not saying that you have to ditch all your relationships if there are disagreements, if people respond in ways that don't work for you, that you have to ditch the relationship. I want to be very clear that I'm not telling you what to do with your relationships. I'm sharing with you some of the dynamics that have gone on and some of the ways that I've processed and tried to figure out, how do I navigate through this? Is this worth staying in the relationship for? Are there more things that I'm getting out of it than things that I'm not? How do I feel when I leave? Is it satisfying? Is it fulfilling? Why am I staying in this relationship? I wish that there was a cookie cutter template that I could say, look, and if you have A, B, C, and D, then keep the relationship. If it has, D, E, F, and G, then get rid of the relationship. It's not that easy. Relationships are messy. Life is messy. And we can have disagreement. Like, one of the things that I love about my relationship with Laura is it's not uncommon. This morning, I told you we use a video app, and so we're not talking live, but she was talking about something that was going on that she was just feeling uncomfortable about. So when I responded to her, I said, hey, I don't know how this sounds for you. If it upsets you, if it doesn't land well with you, don't listen, come back and tell me. Like, we have room in our relationship for disagreement and for conflict. And I don't have that fear of, oh my gosh, if I say something, she's going to get angry. She's going to get upset. She's going to ignore me. She's going to give me the silent treatment. I mean, we go through bumps in our relationship and we've had some tough times, but I know that we always have the ability to come together and talk about it. And there's room for our differences. These are some things that you can think about if you're having relationships that you're struggling with. Is it working for you? It's interesting too, because Steve and I, my husband and I, are going to be recording another episode again. We just haven't done it. And one of the things that we want to talk about is, and I think that this is common for men, I don't know about highly sensitive men, but oftentimes men enjoy doing things with other guys. It's not about the connection that they have. It's about the activity. When we look at developmental stages, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, when, children are about 2 years old, there's something called parallel play, where they play alongside each other. They're not necessarily interacting, but they're each kind of doing their own thing, but together side by side. And it seems like for some men, engaging in common activities is really satisfying and rewarding. For me, it's not only the activity, but it's the connection. And is there meaning? And am I feeling seen and heard? And does the other person share about what's going on? I think being highly sensitive people, we have a higher need for meaning, connection, and depth. And so these are just some things that you can take a look at your relationships. How satisfying are they? Are there things that are deal breakers? Are there things that you're getting some of the time, but not other parts of the time? I think as we grow and change, as our needs change, what we want in relationships can change. we don't talk about this very much. And I really think that the sense of loyalty can either work for us in relationships that really work, but I think it can also create some limitations when relationships aren't working because we feel like we're being bad or wrong. I pride myself on how I show up in the world and how I communicate. And I've often thought like, there are probably people in my life that you could pull out and talk to, and the way that they would talk about how I show up in these relationships would be very incongruent to how I show up for you, the listener. My ego would love to believe that I'm consistent across all boards, and I'm not. There are some relationships that I'm in that are not necessarily by choice. I'm not the same as other people, and I just show up differently. That's part of just being human. It's part of accepting my limitations. It doesn't feel good. I would love to say that I'm consistent across all boards, and there is a very small population where I just don't show up the same way that I do for you, the listener, or for my clients, or for my close family and friends. That's just how it is, and I get to be okay with all of that. Where do we go from here? That's a really good question. You can think about your relationships, if they're working for you, if you want to do some reevaluating. If you're interested in working with me, you can go to unapologeticallysensitive.com. I love helping people kind of work through this stuff. And I think that when we look at the overlay of the tendencies of being highly sensitive and how it impacts our relationships, if there's wounding that's involved, we need to kind of tease that out because we bring our negative histories or negative stories and we kind of keep moving them forward if we're not aware of what they are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a listener. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.